Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks for joining our Finances for Study Abroad at Brandeis Express session. This is a 30-minute session on how overall finances work for study abroad. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump in, and we might have others joining us as we go along. We are recording the session. You should have received that notification. But if you do have any questions as we go along, please feel free to use the chat box and we'll either respond there or someone will let me know to take a pause to explain something verbally as well. And like I said, it's a quick 30 minutes, but at the end, I'll stay around if there are also any other questions. So my name is Alicia Cardwell. I'm the Director of Study Abroad. We are a full office of four full-time staff members. There's also Ari and Ashley, study abroad advisors. You might hear from them in the chat. And Erica is our senior department coordinator. I'm also joined by some of our study abroad ambassadors who are students who have already studied abroad before. Laura, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Laura Walkup. I'm currently a junior at Brandeis. I'm studying both business and economics, and I studied abroad in Copenhagen this past summer through a Brandeis-led program.
Thank you. And I don't think Anya is here yet, but once she jumps in, we can have her jump in with an introduction as well. Okay. So mostly this is going to focus on finances for semester study abroad because it works a little different, but I do want to give an overview and some notes about summer finances.
You're doing that too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to just mute everyone. Okay, perfect. So if someone was interested in summer study abroad, how that would work is that students would pay the cost of the program directly to that program. So typically those programs are going to charge for tuition, housing. Sometimes the programs might include some meals, but all of that is paid directly to that program and whatever they charge. And that can really range depending on the program, the number of courses, the cost of living in the location where you're interested in going abroad. A kind of average cost for summer study abroad is around $9,000 for tuition and housing. And so that all gets paid to the program and can really vary depending on what that program is. The only exception to this is for any of our Brandeis Run programs. Those are operated through Brandeis and therefore you pay that cost to Brandeis directly. For those non-Brandeis Run programs, there is just a $400 study abroad fee that's paid to Brandeis. And then, of course, you want to make sure that you're budgeting for anything that's not included in those costs. So if the program is charging you for tuition and housing, you also have to budget for meals while you're there, your flight there, those day-to-day living expenses, those kind of costs. Financial aid does not typically transfer to summer study abroad. I always recommend to meet with your financial aid advisor to go over any other options or if your aid situation is a little different because everyone's is so unique. So always feel free to get in touch with your financial aid advisor. Students who do have Pell Grants are eligible to use some of those for certain programs for summer study abroad. So it's definitely worth checking in with Student Financial Services. However, there are scholarships available. So I'll talk about scholarships a little later, and a lot of those are also available to students who are going abroad in the summer. So if you're interested in going abroad in the summer, your students interested in going abroad in the summer, definitely get in touch with us to talk more about overall finances, scholarships that are available, and we can help chat through that. Sorry, my screen is not. Okay, so I'm going to transition now to talking about anyone that's interested in going abroad for a semester or a year. And in thinking about finances for the semester, there's two bills that a student would pay. One bill is going to be to Brandeis. One bill is going to be to the study abroad program. And then here you'll see that there's also thinking about some of those personal fees, expenses that aren't included in those two bills. So I'm going to break down each of these now. So first, the Brandeis bill. For a student that would go abroad during the semester, on the Brandeis bill, you can expect to see Brandeis tuition. So that's going to stay the same, stays the same whether someone stays on campus or they go anywhere around the world. That required student fee would also be part of the Brandeis bill. And then these last two would only be in certain situations. So if the program does not provide adequate international insurance, there would be an international insurance plan that's added. It's $38 a month, so it's nothing extreme. And then if the student also still received health insurance through the Brandeis health insurance plan, like for being on campus for the semester, that would also stay as part of the Brandeis bill. Students are required to remain covered under US insurance while they're abroad, if they are still registered as a student in the state of Massachusetts. If you had like an insurance plan through your family and that makes you eligible at Brandeis to not have the Brandeis insurance plan, that's still fine. So that's the Brandeis bill. What you wouldn't see on the Brandeis bill for a semester or year abroad would be any non-tuition expenses. So like room and board would not be included on that. And that's because that's going to be charged to you directly by whatever study abroad program that you choose. So the program bill would have room and board costs. They might have an international insurance plan. So like I said, some programs do. And if that's the case, Brandeis wouldn't charge you for it. They may include some other mandatory excursion fees, but it should be any sort of non-tuition costs. And again, these costs can really vary depending on where the student is going, what the cost of living is like in that location, what the program includes. So some programs, it might just be housing that they include and meals are completely on your own. Other programs might include meals and housing. So that's all just going to vary depending on the program directly. And we'll go over some of these examples too. And then there is a program deposit that most programs will ask for just to hold a spot on a program. Usually those are required, about 10 days after being accepted to the actual program, and they tend to be around $400, $500. So those are the two bills that are received, but of course we want to make sure that students are thinking about the overall costs for study abroad. And so some expenses that you might want to also factor in that aren't included in those bills are things like international flights, your books, visa passport fees, transportation, meals if they're not included by the program, and just kind of personal overall spending. And that obviously can really vary depending on the individual, but also depending on the place where you are. So cost of living can make a big impact on a lot of that as well. Laura, do you want to chime in at all about kind of some of the personal expenses that you had while you were abroad and how you managed that? Just overall budgeting?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest expenses, and this is kind of specific to Copenhagen, was groceries, just because the cost of living specifically for groceries is much more expensive than it is in the States. So that was a big one for me. We also, like our group that I was studying abroad with, we would, have like, okay, we're going to go to like an amusement park tonight. So like having some money set aside for that. The institute that I studied with paid for our books and everything, but I did have to like book my flights, any like travel I wanted to do within Denmark during the time. But yeah, it's pretty much just like stuff that you wouldn't think about, especially if people are living on campus. So meals, transportation, all that stuff.
Thank you. This is also a really interesting website that we like to use. It's called Expatistancom. And what it does is it allows you to compare the cost of living between two different cities. So in this example here, we've typed in comparing Seoul, South Korea versus Boston, Massachusetts. And it gives you an idea, and it's, kind of these averages, these very big ideas, but it can be fun to play around in. If you open up something like entertainment, it will say 2 tickets to the theater, or dinner for 2 out at a local restaurant, or a hamburger at a fast food place. So just like starts to give you an idea of what some of those differences are in those just like little day-to-day costs in a different place. We've also put together a couple of examples of kind of comparing the cost of what it would be like to be at Brandeis versus on a program abroad. And we've done this on this website for a few different places, but of course we could always work through a student that is looking at a specific different program to look through what those costs are. You'll see here that, as I was mentioning, students continue to pay Brandeis tuition, the required fee. So that's going to stay the same no matter where someone goes, and same in comparison to being at Brandeis. Here, we've chosen both Maastricht University in the Netherlands and then also this university in Merida, Mexico, as kind of giving you a comparison of what that looks like. Brandeis costs are based on living in somewhere like East and on a 12 meal plan. So that's kind of the baseline there. And some of these could also vary depending on the student, personal expenses or transportation. Maybe you're from California and you budget in a flight each year to Brandeis. So this could also change based off of that. And you'll see here in this example, Maastricht University, their housing costs are $3,530. They estimate $1,650 for meals. We've put in airfare and estimated out some of these additional expenses. And some of this could change again based on the student. Personal expenses, if you like to go out to see different things, go to shows a lot, maybe this is more than if you like to kind of arrange things with a group of friends and not, go out to things that cost money. So it's just kind of the average of what students have reported spending in the past. So in this example here, being at Maastricht for the semester is $8,585 compared to this cost at Brandeis, $9,475. What this doesn't include would be any kind of extra travel expenses. So, sometimes students in Europe in pre-COVID days might want to travel on the weekends. This does not include that, and that's something that can add up very quickly. So again, can kind of vary depending on the student. Here you'll see somewhere like Merida, Mexico, housing and meal costs are quite a bit less. This program includes meals as part of the housing. It's homestay. So the homestay provides all those meals for the student. So there's kind of a lot of those, less of those extra larger expenses on a program like this where it's a little more contained to the city. So in this example, $4,208 compared to $9,475. So scholarships. There are definitely a range of scholarships that are available for students who are studying abroad. Our office works very closely with students on knowing what these options are, applying for these options, and really going through the basics. If someone's eligible for a scholarship, we'll send out emails. So if someone's paying attention to their emails from us, we'll make sure that they know about any sort of scholarship that is on our radar at least. So here's some of the kind of bigger ones. There is a scholarship fund through Brandeis called the Sacker Study Abroad Scholarships. It's divided into a few different categories that have different eligibility requirements, but mostly if a student is receiving financial aid at Brandeis, they'd be eligible for one of those categories. That application is always due in early March, the year before someone is going abroad, and that goes all completely through our office, and a faculty committee reviews those applications. Most programs will also have scholarships, and these scholarships can really range depending on the program as to how much they give. A lot of times it's $1,000, $2,000. Some will have merit-based scholarships. A lot of scholarships are more need-based, so being eligible for aid at Brandeis typically makes someone eligible for program scholarships as well. But they also have some that are more destination-specific or subject-specific, depending on the range of donors that they might have. There's another scholarship, national scholarship called the Gilman Scholarship. This is for any students who receive a Pell Grant. It is up to $5,000. And our office works closely with students applying to this because it is a national, very prestigious scholarship. And we're very proud of the fact that we've been one of the top producing Gilman scholars among small institutions in the US. On this website too, and we can send this out to everyone that's registered for the session, is a list of other scholarships. So there certainly are a larger range of them, but a lot of those are more place specific, and these tend to be more kind of broader national ones that students can apply for. Laura, any just overall, before we go into financial aid, any overall financial tips, budgeting, how you had conversations with your family about finances?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me when I was like deciding on how I was going to pay for it was like something to keep out a lookout for. If I used my financial aid on the summer program, it would have counted as a semester towards my other financial aid. So my final semester at Brandeis wouldn't have been covered. So that was something that we had to look out for. As for like budgeting, I went with like, the amount of money I was going to spend and kind of split it over a few weeks and did that by looking at the exchange rate and also factoring in like if I'm taking money out of an ATM, I'm going to have to pay this fee and that sort of thing. But I think if you like sit down and say, I'm going to spend this much each week, you might have to adjust it a little bit when someone gets there, but it's definitely very helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, and we like to talk a lot about finances as we go through the process with students studying abroad. So we'll have a section of it in our pre-departure orientation for students. And a lot of times programs will also have these resources where you can really get to see what some of those costs are to expect, how to think about budgeting. It's definitely something that we hear a lot from students who come back from abroad that they wish they would have thought about beforehand, planned out a little more. And so we definitely try to go over resources to help students do that as they're going through this process. Okay, so financial aid. I want to talk a little bit about how that applies to study abroad and to look at that overall picture. Oh, what financial aid can you bring for abroad? If you receive any sort of institutional scholarships or grants, a big one is Alumni and Friends Scholarship, that can transfer over to study abroad. So if it goes toward the tuition that you normally pay to Brandeis, it can transfer over in that same way. The big thing I like to point out to students is that you're not going to be given more aid than what it costs to go abroad. So if the program that you're going on overall is less expensive than being at Brandeis, you're not necessarily given more aid than what it costs to be able to go abroad. And then also it's always good to check with your financial aid advisor. Sometimes when the programs are a lot less expensive, aid gets just adjusted down. And so you just want to check with your financial aid advisor of exactly how that looks for your own aid situation because it is so different for everyone. But in general, those institutional grants that you receive, they transfer over for study abroad. Also, any federal, state scholarships, grants, and loans, they can also transfer over for study abroad. So things like the Pell Grant I was talking about, state scholarships, any tuition remission that's received at Brandeis, as well as loans. So direct loans, parent loans, those can also apply towards study abroad. There is some aid that cannot go abroad. You'll see some examples of that here. These first three scholarships are a little less common. They tend to be for international students that are here in the US, where the scholarship is meant for students to study in the US and therefore it doesn't transfer abroad. So that's not super common to see those as much. Another one that cannot travel abroad would be federal work study. So if that's something that you usually receive on campus, that's one that can't apply towards study abroad. And then if you do receive any sort of VA benefits, that's the other one. It can go abroad, but it has to be for very, very specific programs. So of course, we're happy to work with students to know what those program options are and to walk through how that would work. So on the Study Abroad website, our Student Financial Services Department has to put together this budget worksheet, and we're going to look at that here in a minute. But this would help anyone take a program that they're interested in and look overall at the costs as well as the financial aid that they receive to see exactly how it all works out for them. And what we always recommend students doing throughout the study abroad process, and as early as they want, is to meet with their financial aid advisor to walk through this actual form together. So everyone's financial aid is different. And you just want to make sure that you're reading it in the same way that your financial aid advisor is, and you completely understand exactly how that aid is going to work. And the earlier that happens in the process, the better, because we really want to make sure that everyone understands their financial aid and their overall study abroad costs. So in this example, this student is planning to go on a program in Spain. And you'll see here, this is an Excel document. So you can go in and put these numbers in and it will calculate things for you. So in this situation, the tuition's already set in here. And this is a little bit of an old document, but you see what I'm saying? It's going to be current tuition. So that's set in here. Then what you would do is go in and type in the amount of scholarship that you receive. So institutional scholarships, state and federal grants, outside scholarship loans, and that's going to give you everything that you receive for your financial aid. Oops, sorry. In this specific example, this student receives this amount of financial aid, which ends up being $31,000, which is more than what it costs at Brandeis. So this student can expect to receive a $3,667 refund from Brandeis. that they can then use toward any of their program expenses. So what we did here is we went to the website for this program. So IES Granada is this program example. If you see here, their housing meals, they say is $3,210. So that's the amount that's plugged in here. They are saying $230 for an insurance fee plugged in here. And that's exactly what the program charges. So in that situation, when the program charges $3,440, the student could use that refund they get from Brandeis to cover that amount. But then, of course, there's these additional expenses. So the program, and most programs will do this across the board, where they outline these additional expenses to budget for that aren't necessarily in those bills, right? So they're budgeting things like visa fees, your airfare, your books, all of these things that we've talked about. And so this student has then plugged all of those into this, so they get an idea of what are those extra costs I'm going to have to pay for. In this situation, that's $4,940. So once you factor out, the aid that the student has received, the estimated out-of-pocket expense is going to be $4,713. So for me, I see that amount and I say, okay, what do we need to then look at scholarships to help cover some of this? What feels comfortable? What is that compared to what the student normally pays while they're at Brandeis out of pocket? And so those are the types of things that we can look through once we kind of have this breakdown of costs. And a student could take this, for a couple of programs and work through it with their financial aid advisor. For anyone that's interested in going abroad next year, so next fall or spring, our deadline is coming up on February. Why did I blank on the date all of a sudden? Laura, Ashley, can you?
February
17th. February 17th. So, meeting with a financial aid advisor now to talk about some of those costs for programs and overall aid is a great idea. And where we can help out is knowing what are these costs by the program. What do those look like? What are some other things we should think about? Where are those scholarships that we can start applying for? For students interested in going abroad in the fall, some of those scholarship deadlines have already come up. For those interested in going abroad next spring, probably the earliest one is probably our Brandeis Soccer scholarships coming up in early March. Okay, have we had any questions come into the chat, or are there any questions now?
Nothing in the chat so far, but happy to help answer.
Any questions anyone has? Okay, well, Laura, do you have any last advice, tips for students or families thinking about study abroad?
I think one thing is, if you're looking at it and you're thinking it's going to be too expensive, just keep applying to those scholarships, because I even got a scholarship that I didn't even know I applied for. So there's so many of them. And if you go on the website, the Study Abroad website, under the scholarships, there's so many that you can apply for. And it's really just worth, even if it takes you just do it for 2 hours at a time each day. If you set that time aside and apply to them, it can definitely help.
Yeah, our goal in our office is really to make study abroad feel accessible for any student that wants it as an opportunity. And so we work really hard and really individually with students to make sure that we are talking through all of these different options, that we're finding programs that feel like a really good fit. And if that program's, feels a little bit more expensive than a different program that doesn't feel like good fit, all right, let's find scholarships. Let's figure out how we can make this feel comfortable. And we want to make sure that students, feel comfortable with those finances for the duration of the semester. I see a question, will we make this slide deck available? Yes, absolutely. We can send this out to everyone who's registered for the session. And, a lot of this is very individual by student, both in terms of the program and the program's expenses, but also the financial aid that you receive. So absolutely feel free to come in or virtually come in and chat with us a little for more, or email us with any questions. We're always happy to help, as well as financial aid advisors. Thank you all for coming today. We hope to see everyone soon.